Welcome, my name is Bob Warner, and this is the second in a series of interviews that I had with Don Neuman as he testifies to how God has been working to establish His kingdom in his life. Okay, we're back again. I'm here talking with Don Neuman. Last week he was sharing a bit of his testimony, and there's a lot more to tell. Just wanted to start by reading some scriptures. One from 1 John. These were scriptures that we were dealing with the last time that we were talking. So this is the message that we've heard from him and proclaimed to you, that God is light and in him there is no darkness at all. If we say we have fellowship with him while we walk in darkness, we lie, but do not practice the truth. But if we walk in the light as he is in the light, we have fellowship with one another, and the blood of Jesus Christ, God's Son, cleanses us from all sin. The other scripture was in James, the 5th chapter, that says, confess your sins or your faults one to another and pray for each other that you would be healed. And so walking in the light, confessing our sin before God, brings us to a place of cleansing and restored fellowship. If we want healing, it involves us being willing to confess our faults, our sins one to another, and pray for one another. And then from John chapter 3, it says in verse 19, and this is the judgment, that light has come into the world, and people love darkness rather than light, because their works were evil. For everyone who does wicked things hates the light and does not come into the light, lest his work should be exposed. But whoever does what is true comes to the light, so that it might be clearly seen that his works have been carried out in God. So we were talking the last time about the challenge that you had to step forward and to come into the light in some areas within your life. And you said at first it just seemed like confession, because there was a lot of things to get out into the light. But then it began to transition into more of an accountability. And yes, an accountability with someone else walking with you, but more so an accountability before God in the inner man, in your own private life with him. Mm-hmm. And you began to tell the story of how God talked to you about staying within the speed limit. It was when he was beginning to establish his authority and that walk of accountability with him. And so we talked a bit about that, a bit of humor in some of the things that happened. But when we got done last week, you said there's a whole lot more to tell about what it is you learned and what happened during that time when God was teaching you to be obedient to him in this one area. It wasn't a huge area. It wasn't dealing with all kinds of other areas of obedience or whatnot. It's like, why did God choose the speed limit? But he did. But there was a whole lot more that he was teaching you and that happened in your life. So why don't you take it from there and just begin to explain more of what God was doing?
Okay. I listened to what we had said last week.
Yeah.
And there's a couple of things that God really reminded me. He said that when you're traveling, when you're going the speed limit, he says the one thing that I don't want you to do is use the cruise control.
Okay.
And I was a little upset, because it's kind of, you can set it and then you can just forget about it. Mm-hmm. And that's what he did not want me to do. Mm. Cruise control means that you're using another mechanism to maintain what God is telling you to do.
Okay.
So you're not actually maintaining what God's telling you to do. You're having something else do it for you. Mm. So in that, he says, I don't want you to use any cruise control, because I want you to be in control of what you're doing.
Mm. You to be in control.
For you to be in control. So that, again, puts the accountability on me And it allows me to choose, as we talked in the first part, the action that's going to take place. So the choice is mine.
Right.
Okay. And if you choose to not obey me, then there's certain consequences that happen. If you choose to obey me, then there's other consequences that happen. Consequences are not a bad word.
Right.
It's not a negative or a positive. Okay. Consequence is just a result of an action that you have carried out.
Very good.
And so in that, when I'm driving down the road, you start to really be aware of how you are actually traveling, because now you have to be conscious of it. And so that's, a lot of people don't like to be conscious of what they're doing. It just becomes a reaction or a natural thing of what they do.
Wow. So actually conscious, actually present in the moment, aware of the choices that you're making.
Yes.
Wow.
So it's a totally different atmosphere and a totally different concept of just not just going through the motions, but being aware of actually each step of what you're doing, which is different.
Yes,
that's a whole training process in itself.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm thinking you've got to be thinking like I'm thinking. What are those areas in my life that seemed insignificant, but God was putting his finger on it because he wanted to develop in us the ability to be present in the moment, to be conscious of what we're doing, and to make choices in response to him. And we just simply thought it was an insignificant issue, and we've minimized it, and we've missed the moment. I can think of some areas in my life, but I'm not going into that. This is Don's story.
Oh, we can slip into yours if you want.
All right, so continue on here.
So the other thing that he was trying to teach me is man, there's so many different things that go on in that whole process.
We're not in a hurry, so let's walk our way through, because I know where we're going in the story, but by the time we get there, there's probably no new things that God's going to be dealing with, and we'll be able to talk those through. So this is important. These are developmental steps in your character as a man of God that's preparing you for the future and the destiny that you can see you're beginning to step into now. So none of this is inconsequential. And so don't be afraid to take your time and just explain some of those things out.
Yeah. Going back to the people who are flashing their lights at you and cutting you off, and the attitudes that are being brought up.
All those people who are really happy that you are being obedient.
Oh, they're happy. They're happy. And after I've gone through that process for a little while, God says, he says, I'm not dealing with the other person.
Right.
I'm dealing with you.
Right. You mentioned that last week. He's dealing. Okay. It's easy to point the finger. Why are they doing that? Okay. Why don't they stay on the speed limit? And I'm not dealing with them. I'm dealing with you.
Yeah. Which brings me to another verse. It says, "Judge not, unless you be judged."
Okay.
So and this is what's coming out of me. Okay. And he just throws different things at different times. Like a scripture verse, you'll be doing whatever you're doing, and all of a sudden this verse will just pop into your mind, or this conversation, a certain conversation that you had, that just brings, new aspects, to what, to what he's teaching you and what you're going through. And so it says, judge not unless you be judged. And so when you're driving and you have all these people do all these things, the attitude comes up. And what happens then is that all that frustration, okay, becomes part of you. Like it takes a hold of you. It grabs you. It becomes, you become so intense within yourself, because what you're trying to do is blame somebody else. And really, what you're really doing is that you want to be like them. You don't want to be different.
Okay.
And so in the difference, what you're doing is you're actually taking their guilt and putting it back onto yourself. Because you're judging, that judgment comes back onto you. So the very thing that you are judging, okay, you're actually judging yourself. And that's an ongoing process, and that's an ongoing lesson for me. Like that was one, another aspect or whatever that God was just saying, do what you are told to do. Okay. Don't worry about anybody else, because they have their responsibility. I may be dealing with somebody in a different way, and I have to take them through their process. You may find that, it's not the same as yours. And so you want them to kind of come in line with what you're doing. But that's not, God says, that's not what I'm doing. I'm dealing with you, and I'm dealing with them. Keep the two separate, and don't try and impose your ideas, your thoughts, your patterns on somebody else, because that's not what I'm working on. Like that's not what I'm trying to develop in you.
So you were talking about being present, being conscious in the moment, conscious of the choices that you're making, but you're actually talking also about being conscious of the thoughts, the motives, and the attitudes that are happening inside of you, okay, as other people are reacting to you. I'm sure as other pressures were coming upon you, because I could see you leaving home late, but having to stay in the speed limit. And so all kinds of pressures that are there. I could see others driving with you who felt a certain pressure to be somewhere at a certain time, and you having to deal with and process that and keep your heart and attitude right. So there's a lot of inner awareness and inner processing that's going on here.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And as you brought up, like you're moving late, or you're doing something that's late. And so you want to put your foot down a little heavier so you feel like you're getting there quicker, but you're not. You aren't.
Okay.
Okay. And I've actually tried it out a few times. Okay. Like I wanted to see really what was going on happening. Okay. So, the late part. Okay. I got to get back to that. Okay. So just remind me if I don't.
Yep.
Okay. So anyway, as I was driving along and I'm doing the speed limit, I thought, this person just zipped by me. He's going to get to his destination a whole lot faster. And I'm thinking like, okay, he's probably doing 110, 120, kind of doing the math a little bit. Okay, if I'm traveling like, 20 kilometers, he's doing 120. He's going to get there probably about maybe 5-6 minutes ahead of me.
Okay.
About, somewhere around there. I can't, it's throwing out numbers right now, but just trying to do the quick math. And so what I'd do is I'd look at that vehicle and I'd try and remember that vehicle. So I'd be driving along, I'd be going along down the road, and there was many times where I was driving the speed limit and that person that zoomed by me happened to catch the wrong lane, happened to do something different, you know, and then the next thing you know, either I was passing them or I was pulling in off the highway or coming into the same area as they were at the same time, and I was doing speed limit.
Interesting.
And the other thing that happens, just on a practical note, is that 99% of the time is that you don't have to slow down.
Okay.
Because everybody else is zooming past you. So you're just keeping a constant speed. And so you never have to worry about changing your brakes as often as they do. You never have to worry about burning up as much gas. So
Okay.
just a few things that are just, that you wouldn't really be conscious of. But in the process, I was just saying, like, what I was asking God, what are the benefits? Like, you're telling me to do this, what are the benefits? Okay. Going back to the judgment thing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. One benefit is that if I'm doing what I'm doing and I'm obeying what I'm doing and I'm not trying to put anything on anybody else, there is a peace that comes over you. Like it's a calmness that actually comes in you. I know I'm going to get there. I know I'm going to get there safely. I do not have to worry about looking out for the little ghost car in the corner. I don't have to worry about, any, being stopped or being, pulled over, because some, erratic thing that I did. I'm able to just relax. I'm able to go. These people are going by me. If they like it or not, that's up to them. And so it just became, it became almost like a relaxing thing to, in some ways, once I got rid of all the attitude, okay,
Right.
which takes a while, it takes time. But once I got rid of all the attitude, it became actually a relaxing moment for me to get in the car and to drive. Okay?
So then it establishes kind of your state of mind, your state of being, even as you arrive. It puts you in a completely different place.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Now, going back to the late thing.
Yes.
Okay. So when you're...
I'm glad you remembered, because I was sitting here going, I'm supposed to remind him of something. But I can't remember. So, good. The late thing.
So going back to the late thing, what I found is that God had mentioned a thought or something that come up in my mind as I was preparing to go somewhere.
Okay.
That I needed to do something or I needed to do a certain thing at this time. And most of the time, person would just go, well, I don't need to do that right now. I'll just carry on with what I'm doing. It's like, for me, the one example that I use that most people can relate to is that you're going out of the house, okay, and God says, this thought comes to your mind. God says to you, says, I need you to pick up this item that's sitting either on the kitchen table or your little shop, or I need something. I should take that with me. That thought just comes in. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And you look at it and you're going like, that is not even close to anything that I am doing. And where you're going, like you could be going for groceries and you're supposed to take a screwdriver. Okay. Like, why do I need a screwdriver when I'm going grocery shopping? Like, it's totally unrelated, in a lot of cases.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've learned that when that thought comes up, that's actually a very important thought. Okay. So it's not only just driving on, now you're being aware every moment because you're listening. You want to be obedient. Okay. Yeah. You're learning on obedience. So as I'm going through, okay, God says, I want you to do this. I want you to take that with you. Why? Got no idea. So you pick it up, you get doing what you're doing. Somewhere along the line, okay, you need that very thing that you were told to pick up. Okay. So that's one example, but going to the late thing, God had already told you, I need you to, maybe it was to get up 5 minutes earlier. Maybe it was to do something different than what you had thought of doing, or maybe it was, instead of, instead of having breakfast, or instead of, making a cup of coffee or something like that. No, I should leave now. And no, I got time for that coffee. I got time to do this. I got time to, do that. And then all of a sudden that time just goes whoop when it's gone. And you look down and you're going, oh no, I'm going to be late. Okay? All because you didn't listen to that little thought.
Wow. So just stop for a moment. So you're learning to be obedient to him in one area, which is the area of staying within the traffic, within the speed limit. But as you're doing that, you're developing an ability to be conscious of your choices, to be conscious of what he's told you to be obedient to. Okay? You're learning as you deal with all the attitudes and whatnot to come to a place of a place of peace, a place of quietness, and in that place that you can rest and you can actually become more aware when he's talking to you. And I'm sure there's a learning curve in doing that. But also what you said, and I hope people are picking this up, because a lot of people don't recognize it, that the Holy Spirit has come to live inside of us, so that when he's speaking to us, for the most part, it's going to sound just like our thoughts. But if we become aware and sensitive to the reality that he speaks to us through our thoughts, through an idea that comes to us from the inside, okay, that if we become aware of it, he's very involved in all the aspects of our life. And I'm wondering, you're probably asking the same question that I'm asking is, okay, how many times is he speaking like that in order to somehow make a provision for me, or to position me, or to empower me in some way, but because I'm ignoring him speaking to me, because I'm not in that state and I'm not present with him in the moment, okay, I'm missing them. And my guess is that in learning, and I'm sure you're not totally there yet.
Oh, no.
Okay. But in learning the process, you would be able to see in hindsight that he did speak to you, okay, and to become, okay, aware of the need to pay more attention to that voice and those kind of thoughts that were coming into your mind. So there was a growth in that.
Oh, yes. Yeah. And it's a continual growth. Like, it's not something that you just, you learn and then it's something you put on a shelf.
What I really love about talking to you, and I have since day one, okay, is as you're going through this, and it's the joy I have in mentoring and pastoring people. I learn so much from them. I am what they're walking through, the lessons that they're learning, remind me or accentuate something for me or shine a light on an area. It's just, okay. And so, and it causes you to reflect back on your own life. So I'm doing that right now as we're talking and going, okay, there's areas that God's talking to me about in obedience, and okay, how am I doing with those? And how am I aware of that voice? And I hope everybody's, this is the reason why I wanted to do this with Don and not just have him go to kind of the end result. Cause I want everybody to have I call it the benefit, the privilege of being able to walk through the story. Okay. And see what God's doing in your life. Okay. And I know when you began the journey, it was like, just, when is this stage that I'm going through ever going to get over? Yeah. You weren't sure you were ever going to be able to move forward with God, but I've watched God and his grace in your life, and wow. Okay. So anything more about this learning to stay on the speed limit? Anything else that kind of, you're going, this needs to get out?
The other thing is you're going to end up with a lot of people, like we talked about, the frustration. You bring it to people, what they have their input on it, that type of thing. The one thing that was really interesting to me, and I think it was last summer. And like I've already been through the speed limit thing, and so I'm I can't say that I'm would be 100% there again, but it's that there's another aspect to that. Okay. Just a little aspect of that. But anyway, I was driving on the road and I was coming up to a stoplight and I was driving my motorbike and I stopped 3 or 4 cars back and this other vehicle came up beside me and stopped and they rolled down their window and I'm observant and it's a police car. Like he's driving it's a ghost car. It's a van or a truck, that's a SUV type.
Mm-hmm.
And so he rolled down his window and he says, "I like your bike." And I said, "Well, thank you very much." And it was just a short conversation. I says, I said, the only thing about driving a bike, I says, when you're going down the road and you're driving the speed limit, I said, everybody takes and they all cut you off and they all do all this other stuff and honk at you and everything else. But I says, when you drive the speed limit, I said, there's none of that. I said, everybody slows down. Everybody wants to stay within the speed limit. And there's no jostling for first place.
Interesting.
And he says, yeah, he says, I have that happen quite a bit because when he's driving, as a civilian, he gets all the road rage, right. You could call it. But when he's in his car, he doesn't get the road rage. So I was thinking about that, and there was a few people that were, well, you should be doing this and you should be doing that, and you can drive 10 over and it's still okay, that type of thing. They won't give you a ticket and all that other stuff. And I'm going, okay. So what you're telling me then is that I can be disobedient just to follow somebody else. But when I'm being obedient, then I'm a bother to somebody else. Okay. But when somebody who has the authority, does the speed limit or does what they're doing, nobody questions that. The policeman has the authority to give you a ticket for going over what is the proper speed. I don't. So what is the difference between him driving the speed limit and me driving the speed limit? Okay. Why doesn't he get honked at and cut off? And why doesn't he have all the hand gestures and everything when he's driving down the road doing the speed limit, but I do? And so it was a question that I asked God, in that case. And it was kind of funny in some ways. He says, when I sent my son, he came in authority, but they didn't recognize it.
Okay.
So he was a bother to the people who didn't want to recognize authority. And I thought that was kind of interesting because when he came in as kingdom principles. He came in bringing the kingdom and stayed within the kingdom, stayed within the laws and the rulership of the kingdom. Okay. He was mocked, right? He was slandered. He was beaten. He was tormented, in that sense, or what we would call torment, and all that other stuff, because he stayed within kingdom laws and principles. So he's going, if that happened to him, and he has authority, do you think that when you come under certain principles or certain laws or reigns that are in the land, he says that you're not going to get mocked. You're not going to get criticized. You're not going to get, because, of what other people are doing.
Mm-hmm.
So basically he's telling me, he says, if that happens to you, don't worry about it. He says, you're in the right place. You're in the place that you need to be if you are walking right.
Okay. Wow.
And so it was a different concept for me, you don't see that when you're going through it. And I mentioned that on the first, you never see what you're learning, and there's lots more, but you never see what you're learning until you actually come out of you've gone through it. And then, like I said earlier, God just throws a whole bunch of thoughts into your mind. So, we talked about the picking up the screwdriver when you're going grocery shopping.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you're going along and you start to listen and your attitude starts to become in the right place, God actually does a lot of talking, a lot more than we realize. Because even somebody will say something in a conversation, and this is just all learning through obedience. Like, this is all going through the speed limit stuff, just trying to stay obedient to what he's saying. Right? So there's conversations that'll come up, and then you want to throw in a comment, that you were used to making, or just be part of the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden it's like, no, I can't say that. I can't be part of that, because that doesn't line up with what I'm learning or what I'm being taught.
So what you're saying is you were learning to be obedient in one area. You were becoming very conscious, of the choices that you were making. Then you were becoming conscious of the attitudes and the motives and the judgments that were going on the inside. You're becoming more conscious of his spirit, in your thoughts, and now you're going into other situations, and what you've learned begins to meddle. And the reality of his presence begins to touch and influence many areas coming out of that one area of obedience, because he's established a stronghold of the kingdom, or at least a foothold of the kingdom, in the way that you think and in your awareness. And now he begins to exert the kingdom from that one place of obedience, outward. And I wanted to emphasize that, because the kingdom of God is in you, the establishment of God. He comes to write his laws within your heart and his mind. He comes to establish his kingdom within us. And this is just giving an example. And I'm sure there's a variety of ways in which God uses to do exactly the same thing, but many times we're not aware of it, and many times he's looking to establish his kingdom within our lives. And we're doing the religious things. We're doing we're doing the things that we think are good Christian things, and he's saying, that's nice, but that's not my kingdom. My kingdom is your heart becoming shaped to be obedient to me, starting in one area and then moving out and beginning to affect many areas. And we're going to bring this interview to a close, but probably you could say the same thing that we said at the end of the last interview. There's a whole lot more here. Okay. So he took you from the area of driving in the speed limit, and then he began to talk to you about other areas that began to meddle with your character and begin to reshape your thinking. And he began to build on that, until very recently he brought you into a whole other area of being obedient that stretched you even more and had a lot more pressure involved in it. But then he brought you into a larger place of benefit and blessing. But if I'm hearing from the conversation we had before this interview tonight, okay, there's a lot more pressure involved in that, and you're in a whole new growth curve because he's extending the influence of his kingdom through you, but he's increasing the reality of his kingdom within you. So we have a lot more to talk about.
Oh yes, yeah. There's a lot more.
Okay.
The very first thing that he said to me in doing the speed limit, and you can take it as far as you want to go. He says, if you can't obey what you can see, you're not going to obey what you can't see. So, in other words, you can see the speed limit sign. Okay, that's a law of the land that God has established because He says it in His Word. Right? And you can see the sign. If you can't obey something that you can see, if He's talking to you and He's unseen, how are you going to follow that?
Yeah. And I was thinking as you were saying that I'm going to misquote the scripture, but hopefully get close enough that, it's a good horseshoe throw. Okay. But he who is faithful in the little things can be entrusted with the larger things. So if I can't entrust you, with obedience in this one small thing, how can I bring you into the larger realities of my kingdom? Okay. Yeah. And what I'm really hoping is that you're sensing the Holy Spirit touch you and invite you to actually begin to seek and engage in the reality of the kingdom being established and developed in your life, and just allowing that statement. Okay, if you can't be obedient in this, if I can't entrust you with this, how are you going to develop this kingdom reality in the rest of your life? That's huge. So God, my prayer is that as me and Don are talking, that this wouldn't be about Don. This would be about you. It would be about how you develop your kingdom in people, and it would begin to shine that light into people's hearts, and not in a condemning way, but in a way that they begin to recognize that God has been working for a long time to establish His kingdom, and right now they could begin to engage with Him and becoming aware and conscious of the choices that they're making, become aware and conscious of your voice speaking to them, become aware and conscious of your light shining into the attitudes and motives of their hearts. They can become conscious about how often they yield to other people's opinions, other people's attitudes and influences, and how much they're controlled by those things rather than being under your leadership and your guidance and under your authority. And this would just begin to open up for their hearts, and for others who have been going through the same journey that Don has been going through. They would recognize that, wow, this is incredible. God has been doing that same thing in me, maybe in a different way, but He's been establishing that in me. And I want to seek after His kingdom in my heart and my life in a greater way. And so I'm just praying this is going to be a blessing to you, because it is to me. It's been a blessing walking with you, Don.
Thank you.
Okay.
It's been a journey.
All right. We'll be back again.